Hey there, I'm Lee Ullman here with some big news from the National Young Farmers Coalition. We're partnering with Heritage Radio Network on a special season of The Farm Report. It's all about what's happening with the Farm Bill and how it impacts farmers and eaters.
I am growing diversified vegetables on land that's been in our family for 150 years.
And so with the pandemic, gentrification, property values going up, we had to sell the land and we lost it.
Join us as we uncover the untold stories behind this massive piece of legislation that shapes how we grow our food, what we eat, and so much more.
The problems we have had, those are things that come from earlier Farm Bill and USDA policy, right? Like Earl Butz, get big or get out.
You know, it's my responsibility to know not only what I'm eating, but then like how that all came to be. And realize like, wow, like this piece of legislation, all this money, like it's technically something that I support as a taxpayer.
While Congress debates the next Farm Bill, this is not just an invitation to listen. It's a call to action. Be part of the conversation. Subscribe to the Farm Report on Heritage Radio Network, wherever you listen to podcasts.
This episode is brought to you by Roberta's, home of Heritage Radio Network for 10 years. Learn more about Roberta's at robertaspizza.com.
Hey, welcome to Beer Sessions Radio on Heritage Radio Network. This is September 15th, 2021, and I must say, this is our first time recording in studio since March of 2020. We've been doing remote shows. Heritage Radio Network has kept going through the pandemic, and we are back today in Roberta's Pizza in Bushwick. So in honor of that, we've got our all-star former producer, communications director at Heritage Radio Network, Dylan Hoyer is on engineer. We've got some of our really good friends from Brooklyn, because we're in Brooklyn. And we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of beer bars and draft systems and what you want in your glass, because honestly, I love good beer and I like beer in cans, but one thing I miss most in the pandemic was a good draft and a good pub on premise. And I feel like that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to do a quick intro of everyone so you get a sense of who's in the room. Let's start with our beer bar friend, Fee.
Hi, I'm Fee Doyle. I'm a bartender at Beer Witch, which is in Park Slope and opened last fall.
And you had some huge background. You worked at Beer Table. You've been a writer.
Yep, I worked at Beer Table for a few years. And pre-COVID, I was doing freelance writing about NYC beer and craft beer in general. So.
Well, it's great to have you. And then
thank you.
A friend who knows a lot about cheese and food.
A friend and a fellow Park Sloper. So I'm Claire Matern, and my family's cheese shop, Pillar and Moon, is in Park Slope. And I'm a big beer drinker and eater and pair.
And you grew up in the food business. Maybe want to taste some cheese later, too.
Yep.
And then the stars of our show, we're going to talk about draft systems. We know this guy named Anton from Draft Choice. And it all comes together if you know beer bars and draft systems and the evolution of what beer is in New York City. So we've got some folks from Draft Choice. So you guys introduce yourselves.
Yeah, hi. I'm the other half, Lev Katsuba, the CEO of Cleaning Operations at Draft Choice. And this...
Hello, I'm Angela. I'm back. Angela Style here at Advanced Cicerone and working with Draft Choice now as a draft tech and, of course, field operator.
So it was so great to bring this show together. And Angela, I think a lot of the show, we're going to start with you. We talked about what I'd said before, that I just was dying for a draft. And when I'm in the city, I'm getting a good draft. I was at little places like Gephart's Beer Culture last week. I had a nice Keg and Lantern Food or Pills. The other day, even in a simple pub in the East Village, the Gray Mare, they had a good system. I had some industrial arts, probably a pale ale. All I want to do is drink draft. Today here at Roberta's Pizza, we're back. We're having the Inner Bar Roberta's Hellas Lager. So what happened with the pandemic and draft systems? Because, draft beer, it's supposed to be moved. It's supposed to be clean. This is a living system. This isn't just...
Absolutely.
This isn't like a frozen food that's going to sit there for 10 years.
Yeah, we actually really like to talk about it in terms of like a car. if any of you here in New York City do have a car, remember that you have to maintain it. And draft systems really operate the same way. If you don't maintain for and care for your system, it'll betray you. And you not only get dirty, gross beer, but an inefficient pour, you're losing money. It's only to your advantage, to everyone's advantage, win-win in all cases, to maintain, clean, monitor, and troubleshoot your draft systems.
So March of 2020, you guys have a lot of accounts, a lot of really good beer bars and pubs and everything. Lev, what did you have to do back then?
Well,
I mean, it must have been like a nightmare.
First, it was a lot of panic. Yeah, I had actually come back from vacation that Sunday. Monday was the shutdown. We basically scrambled to come up with a plan on what people should do and focusing on not just abandon it. Don't turn off your fridges and your glycol units and just leave it there. And then from there, it was just a lot of communicating and trying to get into places and expecting people to actually spend money to now preserve their draft system for a future that is completely unknown. You don't know if you're going to have a bar afterwards. A lot of places didn't, and that's where we're catching up now. But some other places did the right thing, which basically, just like taking a cup of coffee from your sink and emptying it out, washing it out, putting it on the shelf, same process. Flush it out, clean it, rinse it, shut everything down, and then come back to it when you can. Yeah.
How do people know? Like, Fee, you're in the business too. How do people know, how long am I going to be closed? That was a huge thing.
Yeah.
Am I closed for a week, 2 weeks? Am I going to pour off all that beer? I mean, what kind of situations came up?
Well, the places that were kind of geared to do to go basically minimized their lines. So they, kept maybe 2 or 4 or 6 lines, kept flowing. Other places just completely fully shut down and went to cans, which you saw everywhere. A lot of other places, after 3 or 4 months, figure out once we could take stuff to go, fired certain things up. And actually, you saw a lot of conversions for cocktails. That was a huge thing during the pandemic. Everybody wanted to do draft cocktails because you could put it in a cup, sell it for a good amount, and send it out the door. But probably 60% of those places just went dark. For that first year, they either shut their system down and kind of put it in hibernation, or they did nothing. And those are the worst. Those are the places we're coming back to now and dealing with, where they're like, "Hey, I want to ramp it up again," and it's been sitting there for 2 years with warm beer, just marinating.
Well, let's not go there. Let's go back to last year. So, Fee, I know you know the business. I bet you have a question for Lev.
Oh.
You have a lot of questions.
Do I?
What? Yeah.
I do.
You do, Claire. You go on. From way back when.
Well,
we're talking about shutting down.
I wondered about the when you were talking about the different lines that they decided to keep open. I know from our end of things with food too, suppliers and everything, it became the most popular things, maintained availability.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the more niche things disappeared.
Yeah, they really
did. Was that
did.
the same thing?
Yeah, and I think ironically enough, you saw in the beer industry, the more niche things stayed. Like, people were more likely to kick like a blue moon line and keep something a little bit more specialty, because all that stuff is already available in cans and bottles and things. So they tried to keep kind of unique things on tap.
And it's trying to find that balance too of what people might want, what people are going to have.
Yeah, but it was really the only places that kind of stayed up were places that were basically not your dive bars. Dive bars, things like that, lowest common denominator, basically just shut down because without any indoor
they
drinking.
shut down their draft.
Well, hopefully,
yeah.
But they basically, we either didn't hear from them at all, or we came in and just shut it down and kind of preserved it. But
did you see a lot of people pivoting to growlers, that kind of growlers and that kind
growlers
of thing?
And crowlers was a big thing. So beer to go came back, and then like I mentioned, cocktails was huge, which it still is. People are still doing that, and we're seeing that.
It's a big change.
Yes,
well, Angela, you're a real industry pro. I don't know when you started working at Draft Choice, but what did you? I just want to get a little picture of that time in terms of beer and draft systems. What did you see? In terms the spring of 2020.
Yeah.
What questions would you have had to ask if you were running a place?
Yeah, well,
because I think of myself, I've been like, if I had 12 lines. And probably the day we got shut down, if it was Monday night, I probably got my delivery on Monday. I probably had a full walk-in of kegs for the week. And I probably had tap some really good stuff and to walk, because having been through disasters in the past, I'm like, to shut down and walk away with a full walk-in of kegs of beer, it's like a tragedy.
It really, really is. I was actually a bar owner during 2020 until September when my husband and I decided to rightfully shut down the project, with it being the pandemic year. We were very lucky to be able to get out of that situation, because we did, of course, think about what on earth would you do? What about your draft systems? Because, of course, I worked as a draft tech before, so I was thinking about those things. So when I linked back up with Lev here and Draft Choice, it was really illuminating finding out what their process was for getting things going again. Because you hear about bars and restaurants all the time and what's happening to them in the pandemic, but the behind the scenes, I mean, the fact that he's telling us that cocktail conversions are on the rise, the fact that people are looking for to-go windows for crowlers and growlers, you can see trends for the industry where people are just grasping at straws and trying to find ways to make money. I actually think that's a really wonderful advantage. Go to your draft company if you really want to know the state of the industry in your area, because it may be behind the scenes, it may not be in your face, but it is, in my opinion, the most important part, because it will give you the green light or the red light on if you can make money off your system or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and Fee, tell us about Beer Witch. Did Beer Witch open during the pandemic?
Yes. So Beer Witch was middle of the pandemic, and we're coming up on a year of being open.
Congrats.
Open last October. Thank you. But in terms of draft systems, it, Krista, owner-operator of Beer Witch, made the decision early on. It was like, well, this doesn't look like it's going to end anytime soon, so, we're not going to pour any draft. And we didn't open up a draft line until April.
Wow.
So...
Of this year?
Of this year, yeah.
Yeah, we installed that system, I think, 3 or 4 months before that or so. Maybe
Okay,
a little
yeah.
longer. But she just didn't fire it up because she knew if she did, the beer is just going to sit there and do nothing.
Yeah,
and that's
Wait, so Lev, so what happens when you put in a new system? Does it have to get used right away?
No, absolutely not. I mean, it's all a matter of once the beer is tapped and it's sitting in the actual line. It's picture like you poured it into your glass. You've got a shelf life here. Up until that point, it's a can sitting there, except, the can is a keg and the glass is the draft system. Even if you poured it into a cup and put it in your fridge, that beer is still going to slowly start to spoil. The glass is slowly going to start to get dirty. So same as that concept. So long as you clean that line, flush it, and purge it, that's it. It's back to neutral, just kind of sitting in the drawer until you're ready to tap something else. You guys at Beer Witch made Krista made an excellent decision to not start tapping it because they had the cans and the bottles. And even then, she only started tapping maybe 1 line, 2 lines, 3 lines, just kind of watching how the foot traffic goes. And I think a lot of people learn that and are keeping that in the back of their head, knock on wood, not for the next time, but just it's, things to consider.
Yeah. And one reason that this show makes sense to me is that I still think of good beer bars as a special place. And part of that is the draft and the experience, but it's also the selection of beers. So what has it been like for you guys? I mean, I'm looking at you have from Oxbow to Alvina to some Italian craft beers,
Sure.
which to me represents what a good beer bar is.
Yeah, I think...
So you guys are really standing out in this time.
Yeah, I think part of the intention was, and for me selling it, is like, I want to go to a place where the whole spectrum of beer is represented. And so you have your money makers, local IPAs and everything. But, for selling beer for a long time, you're like, what I'm concerned about is flavor and something new that I haven't had before. So, finding weird things, rare things. Like some of my favorite things recently are, there's some breweries from Paris that are popping up and we can get a case of that. Or, the occasional Alvin. And, it's like having the opportunity to ask a customer, what's your favorite beer? And let me expand upon that. We don't have that, but let me expand upon that and give you a weird Belgian funky ass thing or a very sour weird thing with lavender and different herbs and atypical beer ingredients. let's show you different flavors of beer. So, and I think that's part of the draft specifically, like only having like 1 or 2 IPAs at a time. And like right now we have a Leipziger Goza. It was a special brew that has lavender and a type of chili pepper. And, we have like a Jolly Pumpkin Jester King mixed fermentation collab. And you're like, that's really exciting. If you're a beer nerd, you're like,
Angela's smiling.
Yeah.
and it really depends on a good, clean draft system for those kinds of beers.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, when I heard that chili, oh man, that's kind of some sticky draft line.
So what happens? When you have a chili beer, what do you do after you run that line?
Well, that depends on when and by who your draft system was installed. Older systems just used older tubing and older technology that may not be able to support that. That stuff didn't exist back then. Draft systems weren't designed to pour crazy sour cocktail wine, chili stuff. The system at Beer Witch, no problem. It's state-of-the-art tubing, stainless steel across the board. You could pour anything from chili, soy sauce, milk, whatever you want through it.
I saw glitter beer recently.
Yeah, you could pour
So
that.
but if I let's say a beer, if she ran a chili beer, do they have to wash it before they put a different beer
For
on?
something like that, you might need a cleaning in between. Yeah, there are certain things like root beer, chili, watermelon actually is something I didn't expect to stick around as much as it does, but it does. The Hell or High watermelon was a fun thing to deal with.
Even peanut butter and allergies?
Yeah.
Yeah, peanut butter and allergies with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if it's a good quality system, just a standard regular caustic flush will take care of it and it'll be gone. If it's not anything super, if it's not sitting there for that long, because it's not really how much beer you poured, it's how long the beer is making contact with the tubing that flavors can seep in. Odds are if you put on a beer afterwards, you might taste it for 3 or 4 pints, but if it's mild, it'll go away, except root beer and watermelon, apparently.
That's interesting. So, Angela, you said keep going with this. This is interesting.
Oh yeah, and just it's funny because
Only because I say that I think some people dedicate certain lines, like they might say, these lines are sour, these lines are IPA. Does that help mitigate?
It does actually. When you have knowledge of draft dispense systems, you can set up your system in a way where hey, these ones can be for the specialty product. Because I remember when I started working with draft systems 8 years ago or so. This was in Chicago at the time. This is when the peanut butter porter craze was sweeping the Midwest, and every single spot that we'd go to.
I just had it in Indiana last week.
Yeah,
It's still there.
Even Not Your Father's Root Beer was a huge thing. The draft company I used to be with became known as the only company that could get that out of your lines. So it really does play a huge factor.
Why does
in your
root beer
system.
pollute the lines?
Especially even the high alcohol products, the root beer specifically, just polyvinyl tubing, which is used a lot in draft systems. It's permeable, so when things seep into it, it's just so hard to get them out.
And is that actually an issue, like the allergy situation? Like,
It is. Yes.
Wow.
Yes. So that's why I continually say, despite being in so many different parts of the beer industry, draft systems for me, I love the most. I love to talk about them the most, and I think they are the most important because it doesn't matter what you make. It doesn't matter what bar you're at. It doesn't matter anything else. If you put your beer on lines that, if you're on a shit lines, you're going to have really bad beer. The draft lines get the final say. So that's why they're so important to pay attention to understand. And that's why we're so big on
what's
education.
the key? Your lines are stainless steel, Lev? What?
No, that's not. That's hardware is stainless steel. Any metal part from your sinky to the tailpieces to the faucet, everything in between is stainless steel. The trunk line is, and I will plug Micromatic in here. I think they have the best trunk line in the market. That's the tubing running, 100 feet, 200 feet. And then the other tubing, the weakest link really is what those flavors actually seep into is the jumper line. Because the rule is the softer and more bendy a tubing is, the more porous it is. That was up until about a year ago, where now we're using new stuff. And, anytime we've installed this new tubing, it's only about a year old. So we've yet to see what kind of, results it can deliver. But to that fact, I will say that what people do with trends on putting IPAs and IPA line sours on sours actually can sometimes kind of kill little nuances and subtleties of flavor. because you're just putting IPA after IPA after IPA on that line, and you're thinking, well, I'm fine. Maybe I don't have to clean it as much because I'm not noticing any differences. But that's just the thing. You're not really noticing those small little notes in between beers. It is a good practice. You should keep your stouts to the stout side, IPAs to the IPA side. But ideally, in a perfect world of a wonderful draft system, in between cleanings, you should be able to tap whatever you want on any single line, because you're not afraid that something's staying there. That's the whole point of cleaning it. It's not that we kind of cleaned it and we want to keep another IPA on there because we might want to taste a stout. It's that it doesn't matter from one keg to the other.
What I want to ask you is, what bars will you actually drink the draft in?
Well, we're working on that list for the general public, but you mentioned the Grey Mare before, and that's one of them because we did a full overhaul.
Wait, which one?
The Grey Mare.
Oh, Grey Mare, yes.
Yeah, we did a full overhaul on those guys, and we're working on focusing, like bringing the people who spend the money and care to light, to let people know, hey, you should go here. We just don't mention anybody else.
I can say something here. There is next to no regulation on draft dispense systems, and that shocks a lot of people. So if you're like, wait, what?
I don't even know what you mean.
There is next to no regulation, and it goes state by state. So
when Angela talks, people listen. That's all I can tell you, America.
Well, this is why us as consumers, we need to be the ones who are honestly educating ourselves and asking, how about this? If you want to know if the lines that you're drinking from are clean, ask them. Start asking the bars. Go to them. Hey, does Draft Choice clean the lines here? Most likely they won't know, but if more of us are asking those questions, if we have a better understanding, then maybe potentially we could change some of the rules and regulations, because we're not coming in and saying, hey, we need to clean the lines bi-weekly in this particular way because of profit, right? It's not actually what we're going after when we're saying those things. We're telling you because that is the science behind it. This is how long it takes for all these things to build up, for the bacteria to build up, for the system to start changing. So bi-weekly recirculation cleaning is the preferred best method. So if you don't know, you should start asking.
I'll tell you this, years ago, a bunch of us started the Good Beer Seal because we wanted to know what's a like-minded, then it was a craft beer bar where I could go and get a good pint of beer. And a lot has changed, especially after the pandemic. I've been in a lot of places where, as craft beer has expanded, I'm going to a good restaurant or a good bar all over the Northeast, and I don't know until I order it, will I actually want to drink that draft beer? Yeah. And so a lot of times, as default, I'll give them the first chance. Then I'm ordering cans. And this is when I had can fatigue. Not during COVID, but afterwards. It's still COVID, but this summer I was like, I'm having can fatigue because I don't want to have to get this can because I know that maybe there's a pub that has Guinness and that's moving. Or you go to the old school pub where the Bud Light's moving. But the other stuff, it doesn't move, it isn't cleaned. I can't drink that beer.
Yeah, and I can't reveal that list, but you'd be surprised of
I'll tell you the list. Trust me.
Of prominent
if you see me posting a can photo in a bar or restaurant, that means their draft system sucks.
Yeah, and my ultimate test is a good pint of Guinness. That's how I tell if the system's in good shape. But I've seen so many places that are so highly acclaimed with all of this reputation behind them that people just go to and take their word for it. And then we finally get in there and it's appalling. And so there's that constant disconnect of, oh, well, they have the reputation, they have this, they must be doing the right thing. But actually, they've just been riding the reputation and they're not doing the dirty work that it takes to, because, getting into a walk-in box and spending an hour in there cleaning stuff isn't that much fun.
Yeah.
Being behind a camera and talking about the stuff and, brewing the beer, everything, talking about it, that's a lot of fun. So that's kind of where we come in. And it's not just us, it's really more just the industry and industry awareness, because I will say the industry on the draft cleaning perspective just needs help, just raw help from anybody who can contribute to it. Because it is an oversight. Because there's the health department's not involved in it. FDA is not involved in it. I don't need any kind of certification to come in, spend an hour, and say, "Oh, you're all set." There's no oversight. So it's really just our kind of moral compass and dedication to the craft.
That's really interesting because it's so integral to a good glass on your bar.
Well, it's like taste. I mean, there's something there, but for you, Fee. So you have a lot of experience working with good beer table in particular, and now Beer Witch. When you walk into somewhere, I guess I don't always say I want to walk into somewhere that I've never been to, because then your life sucks. But you have a sense of, I want to go to these places because I know they have something good to offer me, food or service. They've been recommended. Do you, first of all, think of ordering a draft beer?
I do. Knowing generally where in New York City, where all the beers come from, specific distributors, you take a glance at the draft and now my tastes lean towards Pilsners, like the Finback Crispy Town that we're all enjoying right now. Is it do I want this? Is it new? And in terms of cans, it's more of the getting a sense of, you can have a sense of is this new? It's the same question. When was this made? Or, I'm also always very cautious. I'm and going out with friends who aren't as studied in beer. I'm okay, let me taste that. And I'm okay, well, the food's great. So,
we know too much.
We know too much.
But you also want good beer. Claire, for you, as grew up in a food family, you have a really good palate. Have you had a really good beer experience going out somewhere?
Recently?
Yeah.
I haven't gone out much. I think that's the problem too, is, what's interesting, and choosing a place after so long not being anywhere is harder too, because especially when you're kind of the local and people are like, where should we go? And actually finding that place after so long kind of out of practice has definitely been finding your feet again, and where you're going to go, that you also know where you're going to have that good time, where it's kind of guaranteed because it's been such a long time.
There's all these weird rules. Like the old days would be well, you wouldn't want to have seafood in certain restaurants on a Sunday. You wouldn't want to go on the off night when their main cook wasn't there. And I feel that way if I'm out there just even going into a bottle shop. I'm wow, I like that brand. But you can't go in thinking brand based. You have to kind of find out what they're moving and what they're really excited about. So it's unfortunately it's not just I'm not buying Ford over Toyota. There's a lot more to it than that.
What's interesting is in about the last 6 months, when things really opened up and started moving, it was kind of almost the best time to be a consumer, because all of the old outdated stuff ran out. All of the lowest common denominator bars that weren't taking care of their inventory and products basically shut down. And I don't know about you guys, but about 6 months ago, if you tried to just go out, sit down somewhere for dinner outside, everywhere was slammed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it was the highest turnover rate. And everybody was also really focused on quality and really, in full swing.
That was just after initial rounds of everyone getting vaccinated.
But the other thing you saw was a lot of places only opened at 4:00 because there was no more lunch crowd. And pretty much every place in Manhattan. Now it's slowly coming back. But right now is a good time to go out for dinner, get some good food and some good draft.
We're here at Roberta's Pizza tonight, and Bushwick is open, so you got to come out here. It almost seems dated now, everything's been open, but I'm really looking forward. It's my first time here in a year. Claire, for you with food, what were some food, new exciting things that you learned about? Someone asked me the other day, what's something that you learned to cook during the pandemic that you never had before?
Oh my goodness. Well, I feel like I didn't do anything really new. I have done a lot of dumplings recently. I'm the white girl trying to do my good folding now. I have some good Chinese friends and Korean friends who have taught me. So they're getting slowly better. But I think too, what was weird for me, and I'm sure everyone agrees, I ate so many nostalgic things that I hadn't eaten in about 15, 20 years. I was eating food that I hadn't had since my grandma's house. Because it just felt in those early days, it just felt let me go back to full comfort. And that's what we saw a lot of too in our store, especially with international and the expat community that we have in our neighborhood. It was Walker's crisps, and it was piccalilli and pickled onions and German mustards, and people who couldn't get home were flocking to getting the cheeses and the foods of their home that they couldn't get to.
By last fall, winter, I was just craving good standard cheeses, like a real Parmigiano. And I went on a trip just to get Parmesan rinds for my soup.
And I tell people to keep them. People don't know to keep them. Keep them in the freezer, make a stock, put them in soups and sauces. That's something that a lot of people don't even know to do.
My favorite beer of the night is this bottle that you brought us. Tell us about that. Because again, I want to just give a shout out to Beer Witch Brooklyn. If you want to know what is really good in beer, I've been looking at your Instagram. It's like you've got an Oxbow, you've got an Italian craft beer. And this is I love Wild East. Wild East really opened kind of during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And knowing the guys before they opened, I haven't even been there yet. So
yeah, Wild East they definitely have their own start and
in
stop.
Brooklyn.
In Brooklyn.
Gowanus.
And that brewery row down there. So we've got a bottle of, it's called Zeste Dulcet. It's a mixed fermentation blended, dry hopped with.
It's a little sour.
It's sour.
Very refreshing.
There was some good fruit going on in there.
I believe it's done with Brett, so you get a lot of like pineapple, citrusy punch. And yeah, I'm curious what their story is, because I remember they were about to open up and then COVID hit, and it was just
We did that installation.
Did the installation. So we're going to take a short break. We're back in a few minutes on Beer Sessions Radio and talk more about your showpiece installations on Beer Sessions Radio. All right.
This episode is brought to you by Roberta's, home of Heritage Radio Network for 10 years. Roberta's was founded in Bushwick in 2008 and has become one of the most iconic restaurants in the country. HRN made its home inside of Roberta's in 2009, and together they have become part of the DIY fabric of the neighborhood. Roberta's, the pizza restaurant, is open for lunch and dinner 7 days a week and serves much more than just the famous wood-fired pizzas. Their team dreams up new salads, pastas, and sandwiches on the regular. Roberta's Tiki Bar is alive and well in the back garden, serving up frozen drinks in the summer and hot toddies in the winter. Stop by the bakery and takeout spot next door for fresh breads, sticky buns, and pizzas to go. And of course, there's the 2 Michelin-starred Blanca tucked away in the garden for truly daring diners. But Roberta's also extends beyond Bushwick, with multiple locations in New York City and now in Los Angeles. You can also find their frozen pies in grocery stores around the country. The spirit of Roberta's, like Heritage Radio Network, is everywhere. Here's to many more years of pizza-powered radio. Learn more about Roberta's at robertaspizza.com.
Hey, welcome back to Beer Sessions Radio on Heritage Radio Network. Hey, support us and become a member, heritageradionetwork.org. And guess what, guys? A year and a half later, we're back in the studio here at Roberta's Pizza. So, woo, everybody, high five.
All right.
An all Brooklyn show. And so, Draft Choice, you guys are based in Bushwick. We've been talking about, so Lev, where are you guys? You're right. We're here on Bogart and Moore, which is now like legendary. You can hashtag Bogart and Moore. Where are you guys?
Yeah, we're a 10-minute walk from here on Grattan Street. And it was our bigger space. We expanded. We were actually we're due to expand a month before the pandemic hit. But I decided to take a vacation because I knew I was going to get any sleep for a little while. And it was the best decision I ever made. So we got lucky with that. But yeah, we're pretty central here. And, we commute to everywhere that we need to be.
So. No, I love it. This is New York to me now, Bushwick.
Yeah.
So we talked about what happened at the beginning of the pandemic. You had to shut down a lot of lines, and there's a lot of technical stuff that we're not going to get into. But so spring of 2021, places started opening again. What did you have to go through?
So
and how many accounts did you have to get reopened? That's the real thing.
Well, yeah, it was a little bit of a, a real struggle. I mean, just thinking about it, it just kind of makes me catch my breath a little bit because everybody came at us at the same time. Everybody said, hey, I need this open now.
We're opening Tuesday.
Yeah. And they all replied to like emails we sent out about shutting their system down a year ago. With, we were like, hey, we gave you all of the possible resources, but, we care about our customers, our industry deeply. It's the reason that we're here. So we did everything we could. We're still catching up. To this day, we just did an account where Angela and I were reviewing the photos, and there is the worst things you've ever seen in a beer system that you can imagine. And it's full overhauls. You have to just pretty much tear out a lot of tubing, a lot of old hardware, and completely redo it because it's just that bad. Otherwise,
a really quick thing I want to say, if you taste so-called off flavors in a beer, it's already way far past that point. So don't give me any of that like, oh, it tasted fine. That's not necessarily an indicator.
Yeah. The other half is also surprisingly convincing places to just dump old beer. People are tapping kegs from a year ago.
They were sitting on those kegs. Wow.
And the thing is that some distributors...
I was closed for 3 weeks and we had to dump all the beer.
At least in cheese, we can say it's aged.
And you have to drain the kegs because some distributors won't take it back. So it's like this uphill battle of, the supply chain is still catching up. There's shortages on everything across the board. Everybody wants everything right away. Everything is super dirty, and it's definitely a challenge. We're doing our best, but I will say it's kind of clear to see. I think when you walk into a place and you just kind of look around, if they revamped it and if they use the downtime to clean and reorganize certain things, just paint their walls, they were doing something. They were keeping busy, even if the bar was shut down. That's like a good tell sign of they care and they're kind of investing back into
Let's talk about Gray Mare, only because they're in the East Village. I've been there. They also own Cooper's Craft.
Yeah.
They totally revamped the whole place, didn't they?
Yeah. And that they took the opportunity. They said, we're shut down anyway. Let's use this time to fix the things that we never had the time for because we're constantly open. And at the same time, the draft system was first in their list. And, that's exactly that point.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, some other places, it's like pulling teeth. And people are like, well, I have a 2-year-old keg. I got to sell it. No. It turns into a downward spiral because you're not cleaning your system and you're serving old beer. So people drink it, tastes bad. They don't drink it. So you're not selling beer and the beer is getting older and you're not cleaning your system. And it's just a black hole.
And then they're only selling vodka cocktails.
Exactly.
Because they don't care.
Yeah.
But wow, it's tough.
It sounds like correct me if I'm wrong, but this is like an uptick in you, the draft technician, giving like general education about beer quality, safety, and like how beer is a living thing within a draft line once you are running the keg.
Yeah.
So that's something that's like an extra thing that has been put upon a technician. Maybe?
I mean, we've always been doing that and educating. Angela has been doing a lot of educating. Now it's a little more than ever. And at times it's a little stressful. It's hard because I'm not here to make stuff up. I'm just here to show you what you need to do so that you can pour a good beer for your customers that you should be caring about. And, it can be difficult because...
Well, I feel like you've hit on that too. I feel like consumers and then end consumers even forget that it's a living thing. And that's what I deal with too. Like these are living items that we're drinking and consuming and eating. Yeah.
That's very true. I want to just change the subject for a minute. Showpiece draft system. So like even 10 years ago, like Torst, suddenly the standards went up for what you saw in a draft system and different types of controls. Like there would be different temperatures and regulators and stuff. But that was only at the top of the game. We're talking about going to a place like Gray Mare that I love and making sure that their draft system is working great so that my like go-to beer, like in my industrial arts pale ale, is going to taste perfect every time. I don't need it to be like, I don't need 12 different styles of beer with each line running differently. You want to talk about that, Angela? Because you guys are really up against a lot. It's like getting a good beer on tap. Like everyone always says Guinness, or the Guinness has to be good. But you can go to a place with Guinness and the other lines aren't good.
Cool if you have a really beautiful system on the front. Now show me the back. You know what I mean? Like, cool, great, but what does it really look like? Because you don't really know until you look behind the scenes. So you can have all the bells and whistles, but to me, again, just because I know, that's not really the answer to my question of, is the beer here going to be at its optimal point? Is it going to be as the brewer intended?
So what do you do when you go in? Because you're like, I mean, I give you credit as an advanced cicerone. I'm going to do a little cheese pairing in a minute, but you know your stuff. You know how to talk to people. So let's say you go into a beer bar that you want to go into. What's your first thing? You give them the benefit of the doubt. You taste the beer.
If I'm going as a consumer just drinking?
Yeah.
To be quite honest with you, I know way too much about draft systems. I won't drink draft until I know more about the system. Lev even knows too. In the past, like I've texted him before he and I were working together. I'm like, hey, Lev, you guys service this spot? No. Yes. Whatever it is. And then I know. Or because my husband is, I guess, a glutton for punishment. He's like, I'll try it out. Don't worry, babe, I'll try this one. I'm like, cool, try your
That's
gut
your
later.
cue to get a gin and tonic.
Yeah. So I definitely, I try and ask more questions. Most of the time, again, the folks working at the spot don't know, because this is not unfortunately not a regular part of industry understanding or knowledge, even though it could be to everyone's great advantage.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the time, I just don't until I know.
Yeah. It's also so hard because at any given moment, you're only 4 weeks away from a dirty draft line. Mm-hmm. It's a constant moving thing. So you might come in there and they say, oh, well, draft choice was here. Like, yeah, a year ago. It's not prominent. And even if we do everything that is in our power, just simple in-house maintenance. Like, have you ever seen glassware upside down on the drip tray? Because they're slinging pints. It's an Irish coffin and they're going. Under that drip tray is just a whole SCOBY thing of living stuff. And that's from yesterday. We were there 2 days ago. We cleaned the lines. We cleaned it out. The drain's not draining. So it's a really difficult thing to, really put just a stamp of approval on, because it's always changing.
I never thought about this. 20 years ago, I had a good friend who was German. He was a mechanic, and he was really diehard about his beer. And he was the one that first said to me, I only drink bottled beer in America, because back then he didn't trust any of the draft systems.
Rightfully so.
Let's go to Claire. Claire, so you brought some cheese for us. So I want to hear more about you, because I got to meet you online, and we've done some shows together talking about food and everything.
Yeah.
But I know you grew up in the family. Your dad's cheese person and food person.
Yep.
What did you bring us today?
Yeah. So, even just picking up on your German friend there, that's kind of my dad's feeling as well still. I mean, he's been in the industry for 40 plus years, and he is a picky drinker when he's out and about, and, mostly goes out when we're in Europe. But in terms of cheese, today I brought a goat cheddar, because I thought it would go really nicely with the Pilsner that we had and some other things. It's got a really sweet finish. It really comes out of left field. Whenever we have it, it's always a favorite in store.
Your family shop, Hiller and Moon.
Hiller and Moon in Park Slope.
Do you have beer there too?
We don't, because we don't have a liquor license or anything like that. So we don't carry anything hard.
But you picked up the Finback pills.
Yeah, and what's great about this too is, it celebrates good domestic cheese. So this is made in Wisconsin. It's a family, the LeClaire family dairy in Wisconsin. And it's a really exciting cheese because people don't normally associate goat's milk with cheddar. So it's also just a really fun, kind of pairing of both worlds. We saw, I don't know what came out during the pandemic. Everyone started eating goat's cheese. Everyone was like, discover goat's cheese. So it's a fun way to do that. But also what's really fun is how a lot of cheeses incorporate beer into their making. A favorite of mine also from Wisconsin is a Sartori raspberry ale wash. And then there's a great one that's impossible to get in England. Well, impossible to get because it doesn't come here from England, called Hereford hop, which is rubbed with hop flowers. And it's remarkable.
Great.
How do those... We'll tell you when you wash a cheese with beer.
Well, you wash during the aging process. So once a cheese is made, depending on the cheesemaker and the process of it, it'll be washed for up to weeks or months after, and kind of on off weeks or off days. It's totally dependent on the cheese making. With the Hereford hop, it's that once the cheese is made, then they rub it down with the hop flowers and they let that sit, and that becomes part of the rind.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had the great fortune of being able to work not only with beer in my years in the industry, but with cigars and food, wine, alcohol, and of course cheese. That was my world the last few years. And I tell you what, I was able to slip into the cheese world a lot easier because of my knowledge of beer. They are incredibly similar. They are incredibly similar in how they are built and constructed. Even dare I say cigars, same kind of thing. There's 3 parts to cheese: the rind, the cream line, and the paste. Same kind of thing with a cigar. There's 3 different portions. So there's a lot of similarities across all the boards between all these things that you work with your palate or consume on a smoking, eating, or drinking level.
So, on my on-premise experience, because I want a good draft and I want some food with it, would you serve cheese in in a nice beer bar pub? Claire?
I mean, I think the way to best do it is anyway. I'm such a purist and a traditionalist that cheese should be served as cheese. I have a lot of not issue, but whenever you want to doctor it up or start playing around with it, that's when I feel like you lose what the essence of cheese is supposed to be, which is just to be consumed as the product. So a nice simple cheese board, and you don't have to people overthink things. And I talk about this with customers all the time. You will never make a wrong decision, and you can't overthink it. These are beautiful.
Some cheese boards
products.
are weird, like they're for Instagram.
Over the top.
You have like 20 things on there. All I want is a freaking piece of cheese.
And the trend too of like overstuffing your cheese board. Like that's not how cheese boards work. Like you have a nice piece, you want to let it breathe, you want to have the room around it. You want to have this be the centerpiece. And so much now too about like overstuffing these cheese boards is like you actually lose the idea of the cheese that you should be celebrating.
Talk about fun cheese at Hiller and Moon. So where is it exactly?
So Hiller,
Brooklyn.
Yeah, it's in Park Slope on Union Street, just up from 7th Avenue.
So back in the spring at our Brisket King event, you brought me that hay-covered cheese.
Yeah, the Hoyblumen. So that's a beautiful, one of my favorite Swiss cheeses. And I was lucky enough to live in Switzerland as a kid too, so that was a favorite of mine from childhood. And it means hay flowers. So really botanical, really herbal. I always
it's like packed with hay flowers on the outside.
So just the way that the Hereford hop is covered in hop flowers, and that infuses into it. The Hoyblumen is these alpine flowers, and I tell people it tastes like a mountain. Like you're like Maria spinning on the opening scene of Sound of Music, but you're eating it.
Kind of like Alp Blossom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Similar. Yeah. So it just has these. It comes out kind of like really surprises you. Yeah.
I want to say too, again, just coming from both beverage and food side, especially with cheese, most of the time people are like, oh, wine with cheese. I mean, sure, absolutely. There's fantastic wine and cheese pairings, but honestly, take that out of your brain. The first and foremost thing that you should think about, carbon dioxide, carbonation, bubbles, because this is a fat. Cheese is fat. How do you cut up fat and scrape it out of your mouth and reset the palate? Bubbles. So whether it's bubbly wine, beer, of course, duh, and
actually, I need
cocktails.
More cheese, please.
Yeah. Well, and also think about historic. That kind of the idea if it grows together, it goes together. And think historical eating. Most of the time, people were drinking a lot of beer and eating cheese because both were also ways of preserving things. And that's the whole thing too. When people say like, "How long will this last?" It's like it was made to last. This is why cheese exists.
My mouth's full of cheese, and I need some beer.
Let's
go to beer with So we're up to cheese and draft systems. We're like the what's it called, the restaurant repair crew or whatever. You don't need the repair, but we're going into Beer Witch. So what you guys serve any food? Let's talk about the customer experience because I want to go there. I love the beers you have.
Oh, we'd love to have you. We
setting up the next hang together. Okay,
yeah,
deal.
Sounds
good. We're all inviting ourselves.
Where are you located exactly? Because Brooklyn's a big place.
Yeah, so we are on Bergen Street, which
Close.
In my mind, it's just like the very, very beginning of Park Slope, stone's throw away from Barclays Center. And when you walk in, we have, I believe it's eight fridges, cold fridges on your left. And we're categorized by style. So we have dedicated lager fridge. We have 2 hoppy fridges. So, not exclusively IPAs, but things that feature hops. And we have a strong fridge, 2 sour mixed culture fridges, and like a grab bag fridge that includes sodas, non-alcoholics, and just sort of maybe a peanut butter milk stout, something like that. So
I love the way you organize that. I've done that in the past for your program. It's one of my favorite ways to do it. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's a really wonderful way to orient someone if they have no fucking clue. Like, because it also is kind of a kid in a candy store situation. You're like, oh, there's 150 beers here. Where do I start?
You sound really big on educating your customers, which you honestly rarely hear in the industry. And
absolutely.
It's so important. How are you going to get them to come back and trust you and think of you as like the go-to spot? I love that.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of the mission is to seek to expand people's knowledge, taste buds, vocabulary. And that's the kind of thing that is kind of beginning to ramp up now that we're coming up on a year of being opening, planning on tastings, maybe a cheese event. It sounds like a great idea. And just even brewery events. Like we had a Lawson's tasting, and it was such a glory to be able to do something like that, finally, just to have that experience. But and then we have a draft list, of course. Speaking of the excellent draft system, we have 2 Lucre faucets. They're a side pull.
You guys also actually have one of my favorite tower draft designs that when we were designing, I'm so happy she picked that because I wanted to use that for so long.
This is exciting. Tell us about the tower draft and the Lucre.
I think if you want to see it, if you want to see the tower, you're going to have to go there and visit. Yeah. The Lucre faucet is actually massive.
The tower, what is special about the tower? Is it just the...
It's it's a very unique shape and design.
Is it shaped like a tree?
No, it's not shaped like a tree. It was designed by an Italian company called Foot Maurice. But I'm not going to tell you. You have to go there and see it. You have to go there and get a beer.
So there is a showpiece.
There's definitely a showpiece, yeah. And it's one of my favorites.
Wow. So gather around the beer tower.
Yeah.
I like that. And what about the Lucre faucets? Because we did a show last fall with my buddy Chris up at Notch in Salem, who's been a real advocate for Czech style pours. Lucre, what is it? Because I love my beers on Lucre.
Yeah, so...
What does that mean?
Well, the design of that faucet gives you a lot of control over how you pour the beer.
It's like Czech style pills, right?
It has two, but it also aerates the beer as it pours out, which it brings out a lot of very delicate notes in the beer that otherwise might be buried deep in, and it also creates a really great frothy head. And there's 3 different pours that you can do, and depending on what you do, you have different. It kind of hits your senses a little bit different, but also locks some of the flavors in underneath. So you're kind of going through this experience of kind of flavor layers, and it also just gives you different opportunities to control the beer a little bit differently. It's also a little bit of a headache because it's a very complicated faucet.
Indeed.
And it's brand new. So every time something brand new comes up, everybody kind of has to catch up and learn. But it is very unique and very interesting. And I've had, for my own personal comparison, the same 2 beers, a regular faucet and the Lucre faucet. And it does really make all of the nuances.
The only difference is the faucet.
Yeah. It makes it. It's the faucet has a lot of different hardware in it that forces the beer to pour a different way, and it does make a noticeable difference of the nuances of flavors and effervescence and things like that.
So it's actually it's pretty fascinating when you put down, like, if someone asked what a Maliko pour is, like, that is something that, as it might sound, looks like there's so much foam in the mug. We have the dimple mugs that they're like, what is this? Why is there so much foam? And you're trying to, like, present the beer in such a different way that it's going to highlight the malts very differently. You'll get bitterness in the foam. And I always talk about it as if it's a cappuccino. And, like, you want this silky, textured thing. And I worked in coffee for a long, long time. So that, in my mind brain, that's where it is. And it's still, like,
so I could have a matcha Malika.
Yeah.
Can you do Malika art?
That would be fun. That could be the evolution.
Claire, you and I will go get
Fiorentino.
But I guess our listeners too, you won't even understand what this is. Like, literally the Malika pour. So tell us about the Lucre pours, because I haven't even seen them all. That's basically, most of it is head, right? Who wants to talk us through what the pours are for Lucre?
Oh, well,
I think Lucre's the next friend. I feel like every good beer bar has to have a Lucre faucet.
So I haven't perfected the pours myself. I know more about the hardware and the troubleshooting of the faucet, but I am aware of the 3 pours. The first one is the regular pour. It's mostly beer and a good head on top. The second one is half and half. It's half beer and half Moloko pour. And the third one is where it's mostly Moloko. Pretty much.
And they're Czech style, so they have Czech names.
Yeah, and it's in Czech, everything is in a big pint. And they also, their standards are just way above and beyond anything that we have, as you heard, when people don't drink beer in America 20 years ago, unless it's in a bottle. But it's designed to kind of target different flavor profiles. So if you picture, the best way I can kind of put it together is back in the day when you first saw a foam of a beer that was like 3 inches tall above the glass, but stayed there. you were like, that's different. Why is that foam so different? Why is it so thick? And you experience different notes in that, as opposed to just a Bud Light that you poured out and had absolutely no foam and dissipated. So whether in liquid you have different flavor characteristics, and
Or
in
you had
foam,
a bad, like a foamy beer because it was hot. Like
it
was crap.
Yeah, this isn't that, And in foam you have different characteristics. Foam being more aromatic, more subtle, little nuances.
I grew up drinking my dad's foam.
Yeah.
What kind of beer was he drinking?
Well, no, but in Europe, you just like give your kid the taste of the foam.
And in liquid is the more dominant flavor. So you have your three options of, do you want to go for the robust, full liquid pour flavor, the in between when you would experience both, or the last one where it's mostly foam and you're just kind of just literally dipping your nose into it and breathing it in, and coming up with a beer mustache.
Yeah, I mean, so often people are talking about the aroma.
I like beer mustache when it's good beer.
Exactly. It's a good sign, right? But the flavor and the aroma is always talked about, but not nearly enough the mouthfeel. It's such a funny word, but the mouthfeel, truly, I mean, it's such a huge factor. Why I brought up bubbles with the fats and cheese. Like, it has such a huge effect. So I think that's what's so cool about the Lucre faucets. It's almost teaching people about why mouthfeel is important.
I'll tell you, that's why, by the spring 2021, one thing I was frustrated about most beers in cans, even though I knew the breweries were good, it was the mouthfeel. And I was getting the same damn mouthfeel from the cans that I can't. There's something about a good draft beer, and I don't know the technology behind it, but I'll tell you this as an experienced drinker, there's something about a good draft beer that makes me want to drink more than one. Well, and when I don't like that beer, I can't even finish one.
I think it's also a little bit of like social emotion, because when you're opening a can, it's kind of by yourself. It's your beer, you're opening it. But just the experience of going to a bar or pub and restaurant and having a draft beer served and seeing a whole bunch of other pint glasses throughout the room, you're kind of sharing experience. It's communal as opposed to just kind of
solitary. Kind of like this. Let's do this.
It sounds corny, but it's kind of like a hearth of a bar. You know what I mean? Cheers.
No, it's good. We got into something. It's like, so I actually came into the show. I'm like, you know what? I want to talk about having this special showpiece draft system, but not one that's too fancy, like the whatever that one from Beechwood was 10 years ago that everyone had to do. It cost, well, how much would that have cost?
I don't know.
The flux capacitor? One at the flux capacitor.
I'm going to plead the fifth on that.
Let's just say that was 10 years ago. But just hearing about this special tower at Beer Witch in Brooklyn, I'm going there. I'm going to check it out. I want to stand by that tower and drink my beer and have some cheese pairings with it. Thanks to Claire Matern. And you guys have been great. Anything else we want to get a shout out to, Angela? A favorite something you want to mention that, like, okay, I'm here at Roberta's Pizza. Guess what I haven't had in a year? I want the Bees. What is the Bee beer? It's like the beer pizza. It's like got the Mike's Hot Honey, and it's I can't even remember the name of it, but it's the classic here. So I'm gonna ask for that Mike's Hot Honey pizza.
Bee Sting.
Bee Sting. Thank you. All right, Angela. What's something you're craving that we should know about and get in Brooklyn?
You know what? I'll be completely honest with you. During the pandemic, only till recently, I just started drinking beer again because mental health was also at abysmally low, right? Like, that's a huge, huge topic when it comes to pandemic. There's a lot of shots of whiskey. So I'm now switching out the shots of whiskey for getting back into beer. So this is kind of my reinvigorating jump back into the beer scene. So this collaboration actually that we're drinking, the Hellas with Roberta's, is kind of perfect way, I think, to do that.
Yeah. Lev?
Well, first I want to give a shout out to my girlfriend because she rolled up her sleeves and went out there shutting draft systems down with me in the middle of COVID. But for an experience, if you're looking for a really like top quality beer experience, there's a lot of places, but I would recommend one which is Hilo Bevco, which I went to recently, and they opened up as well right before the pandemic hit. And it's a very unique setting, and they really, really care about their craft. Bushwick. It's in Bushwick.
What street?
I don't know.
Somewhere around here.
Yeah, it's not far.
Hilo Bevco.
Yeah, it's a really, really fantastic beer experience to just talk to them.
I think we're going to go there afterwards. Yeah. And Claire?
Oh, well, I guess a food shout out other than Cheese and Union Street, another great pandemic company that came up is called Tannabelle, and it cooks weekly feasts with Syrian refugees. So want to shout them out. They do an amazing menu.
Yeah, and where do they do that?
They cook out of Park Slope and they deliver, or you can pick up.
So in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
All right. And Fee? Besides that beer tower.
We partner with a neighborhood business, Brooklyn Larder. So we get weekly deliveries of what we call a cheese baby. So it's a selection of 3 or 4 different cheeses that you might put onto a cheese plate. It seems like they, all-purpose prepared foods, cheese. They do sell beer as well. It's just been an excellent go-to spot. And I mean, for me, I honestly haven't gone out so much beyond just I work at a beer bar and I know a good place to get beer. So, I mean, I'll get cheese and good snacks there. So
You guys are
awesome.
amazing. I'm giving a shout out to New York City Hospitality Alliance head Andrew Ridgey and the work that organization's done this last year. A year ago, unfortunately, restaurants, bars, hospitality were getting shut down. This summer, the Hospitality Alliance took the lead and said, you're going to have to be vaccinated to come and dine indoors. And we're here today at Roberta's. We walked in, we all showed our vaccine, and we're able to have a normal experience. And I just want to thank you again, Andrew Ridgey, New York City Hospitality Alliance, for taking the lead and keeping our businesses open. So thanks so much for joining us here. Big shout out. We got everybody say their name, and we'll do a closeout.
Feed Oil.
Claire Matern.
Lev Katsuba.
Angela Style.
And I'm Jimmy Carboni. I'm the host here on Beer Sessions Radio. Thanks to Dylan Hoyer, our producer, engineer, and awesome Heritage Radio Network person. Thank you so much for joining us here. We'll catch you next time on Beer Sessions Radio. All right. Woo! Thank you. Beer Sessions Radio is powered by Simulcast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network. Food radio supported by you. For our freshest content, subscribe to our newsletter. Enter your email at the bottom of our website, heritageradionetwork.org. Connect with us on Instagram and Twitter at heritage_radio. You can also find us at facebook.com/Heritage Radio Network. Heritage Radio Network is a nonprofit organization driving conversations to make the world a better, fairer, more delicious place. And we couldn't do it without support from listeners like you. Want to be part of the food world's most innovative community? Subscribe to the shows you like. Tell your friends, and please join the HRN family by becoming a member. Just click on the beating heart at the top right of our homepage. Thanks for listening.